Alex's life had been a tapestry, woven with the mundane threads of routine, morning coffee, spreadsheets, and quiet evenings spent with dog-eared books. It was unremarkable, perhaps, but it was theirs, a sanctuary of predictable comfort. Then, without warning, the tapestry unraveled, violently shredded by a single shattering accusation. The knock on the door had been polite, almost apologetic, but the words that followed echoed with the finality of a death knell. Embezzlement. A sum so astronomical it made Alex's head spin. A crime so audacious it felt ripped from the pages of a thriller, not from the quiet hum of their own existence. Disbelief warred with a rising tide of panic. How could this be? Their past, a meticulously guarded secret, a single youthful indiscretion long buried, suddenly felt like a gaping wound, leaving them exposed and vulnerable to the world's harsh judgment. The trial was a blur of legal jargon and hostile stares. Each day, the courtroom felt less like a quest for truth and more like a public spectacle. The evidence, Alex knew, was flimsy, circumstantial, yet it was presented with a conviction that brooked no argument. Every desperate plea of innocence, every logical counter-argument, was met with a wall of skepticism, drowned out by the clamor of public outrage fueled by sensationalist headlines. The jury, swayed by impassioned speeches and carefully curated half-truths, returned their verdict with chilling speed. Guilty. The words slammed into Alex, stealing their breath, crushing the last vestiges of hope. The gavel's final thump resonated like the closing of a tomb, sealing away not just their freedom, but their very identity. The gates of the minimum security prison clanged shut with a sound that would forever haunt Alex's nightmares. The stark reality of incarceration hit with the force of a physical blow. The sterile hallways, the constant hum of unseen machinery, the distant shouts. It was a world stripped bare of comfort and dignity. Fear was a cold knot in their stomach, a constant companion. Yet, amidst the despair, a fragile flicker of hope persisted. The appeal. They clung to it, a lifeline in an ocean of despair. In the communal areas, a man with deceptively kind eyes and a ready smile approached. Silas. He spoke of camaraderie, of navigating the system, offering advice and a listening ear. His words were a balm, a welcome respite from the pervasive loneliness, but beneath the veneer of friendship, a subtle manipulation began to take root, planting insidious seeds of doubt. Alex, desperate for any connection, any understanding, found themselves confiding in Silas. They spoke of the unjust accusation, the fabricated evidence, even hinting at the past mistake that had left them so susceptible to this cruel twist of fate. Silas listened intently, his gaze unwavering, offering false comfort and vague promises of help. He suggested he had contacts on the outside, people who could look into things. His words were a soothing balm, easing Alex's raw anxiety. Then came the request, seemingly innocuous. Just a small favor, he'd said. A simple message to be passed on, nothing that could cause any trouble. Alex, blinded by gratitude and a yearning for connection, readily agreed, unaware they were walking directly into a carefully laid trap. One evening, while retrieving a forgotten book from the common room, Alex overheard hushed voices from a secluded corner. Silas's voice, low and conspiratorial, was unmistakable. He was discussing something illicit, something about a delivery and loose ends. A cold shiver traced its way down Alex's spine. Paranoia pricked at the edges of their mind, a brief, unsettling moment of suspicion. But it was quickly dismissed. A misunderstanding, surely. Silas was their friend, their only confidant in this desolate place. The thought was too painful to entertain. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The clanging gates of minimum security faded into a memory, replaced by the harsher steel and concrete of medium security. Alex's transfer felt less like a move and more like a fall, a descent into a grimmer stratum of incarceration. The air here was thicker with tension, the unspoken rules more rigid, the threat of violence more palpable. Adapting was a brutal struggle, The subtle shifts in power dynamics, the constant jockeying for position, and the predatory glances from seasoned inmates made every interaction a calculated risk. Alex, still reeling from the injustice of their initial conviction, found themselves perpetually on edge, a raw nerve exposed to the ever-present dangers. Then, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. Silas. He seemed to have thrived in this environment, his influence noticeably expanded, his demeanor radiating a dangerous confidence. He approached Alex with the same disarming smile, offering protection from the more aggressive elements of the prison. But this time, the offer came with a price, unspoken yet clearly understood. Alex remembered the favor Silas had requested back in minimum security, the seemingly innocuous message. It had resurfaced, not as a simple delivery, but as a minor infraction attributed directly to Alex, a carefully orchestrated misstep that landed them in a week of solitary confinement. Silas had used it to demonstrate his reach, his ability to both deliver trouble and offer salvation, cementing his control. Now, he began to subtly coerce Alex into more compromising situations, small acts of defiance against the guards, minor smuggling of forbidden items. When Alex tentatively pushed back, Silas's smile thinned, and his words dropped to a chilling whisper, mentioning Alex's family on the outside, a veiled threat that sent a cold wave of terror through their heart. Amidst the escalating pressure, a fragile blossom of hope unfurled. Jamie, a new inmate transferred from another facility, entered Alex's orbit. Jamie possessed a quiet strength, a resilience that resonated deeply within Alex. Their conversations were a balm, a shared recognition of humanity in an inhumane place. A tentative friendship, perhaps even the stirrings of something more profound, began to form, offering Alex a precious glimpse of connection and a reason to cling to the idea of a future. It was a fragile, vital link to the outside world, a reminder that warmth and genuine care still existed. Silas, however, observed this burgeoning bond with a simmering resentment, his eyes narrowing with an almost possessive jealousy he struggled to conceal. Silas, now fully revealed as a cunning manipulator, could not tolerate this burgeoning connection. He saw Jamie as a threat to his control over Alex, a rival for the emotional currency he so meticulously cultivated. Fueled by a toxic cocktail of jealousy and a calculating desire to maintain his hold, Silas decided to eliminate the problem. He orchestrated a new, far more serious offense, framing Alex with an insidious precision. Evidence was planted, a shiv hidden in Alex's bunk, traces of contraband in their locker. Witnesses, coerced and threatened, painted a damning picture. The prison authorities, already wary of Alex due to the previous minor infraction, found the manufactured evidence overwhelmingly convincing. Alex's newfound hope, their fragile connection with Jamie, was brutally crushed under the weight of this new, fabricated guilt. Despair, cold and absolute, descended like a shroud. During a routine cell search following the framing, a small, tightly folded piece of paper slipped from beneath Alex's mattress. It wasn't prison issue. Unfolding it, Alex saw a crude drawing, a series of interconnected lines, leading from a stylized depiction of the warden's office to a specific cell block, and then to Silas's name, scrawled in a familiar hand. Below it, a single chilling word: pawn. The realization hit Alex with the force of a physical blow. Silas hadn't just betrayed them. He had been playing a much larger game, a complex web of manipulation. This wasn't just about personal vendetta. It was about power, influence, and perhaps something far more sinister. The original conviction, the swift trial, the convenient evidence. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. Alex wasn't just an unlucky victim. They were a pawn, an expendable piece in a game whose rules and players they were only just beginning to comprehend. The true malicious intent of Silas and the extent of his scheme was laid bare, leaving Alex with a terrifying, profound understanding. The metallic clang of the maximum security gates echoed like a death knell, sealing Alex's fate in a desolate, brutal place. The air here was thick with a palpable despair, a suffocating blanket of isolation that threatened to crush the spirit. Each day blurred into the next, a monotonous cycle of concrete walls, steel bars, and the chilling silence broken only by the occasional guard's bootfalls or the distant guttural cries of other inmates. All outside contact had been severed. Letters went unanswered. Visits were denied. Alex's sanity frayed at the edges, the relentless solitude a torment far worse than any physical hardship. They questioned their own resilience, their ability to survive in this abyss, wondering if their identity, their very essence, would simply erode into nothingness. Then a shadow fell across the cell door. Silas. He stood there, framed by the harsh fluorescent light, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He was no longer just an inmate. He seemed to exude an aura of perverse authority, a king in this grim kingdom. His eyes, devoid of any warmth, gleamed with triumph as he savored Alex's suffering. He began to speak, his voice a low, venomous hiss, detailing his scheme, recounting how he had carefully orchestrated every step of Alex's downfall, from the initial accusation to the planted evidence in medium security. He reveled in the ruin he had wrought upon Alex's life, painting a vivid picture of the shattered existence outside, the whispers and condemnations that followed Alex's name. The motive, he finally revealed, was a deep-seated grudge, a festering resentment from a forgotten slight in their shared past, twisted by Silas's insatiable desire for personal gain and control. Yet amidst the crushing despair and Silas's cruel taunts, something flickered within Alex. A stubborn, defiant spark. The memory of Jamie's quiet strength, the fragile hope they had shared, refused to be extinguished. It became an anchor, a reason to refuse to break. Fueled by a burning desire for justice, Alex began to observe. The prison, initially a chaotic blur of despair, slowly began to reveal its intricate power dynamics, its hidden weaknesses, the subtle currents of information that flowed beneath the surface. Every guard's shift change, every inmate's routine, every whispered conversation became a piece of a larger puzzle. A meticulous plan, born from sheer willpower, began to form in the quiet recesses of Alex's mind. They would not just survive. They would fight. Through the limited illicit channels of communication that existed even in maximum security, and through fragmented stories pieced together from other long-term inmates, Alex began to learn more about Silas's past. Whispers of a troubled youth, a history of petty cons, betrayals, and a chilling knack for manipulation. He had always been a predator, skilled at exploiting vulnerabilities, weaving intricate webs of deceit to climb his own twisted ladder. This knowledge provided Alex with crucial insight, transforming Silas from an abstract tormentor into a predictable adversary, his methods and vulnerabilities suddenly exposed. He wasn't invincible. He was just cunning. The true enormity of the situation, however, struck Alex with a cold, terrifying certainty during a rare, surreptitious exchange with an old, grizzled inmate known only as the librarian, who communicated mostly through cryptic notes passed in torn paperbacks. The librarian, with a lifetime spent navigating the prison's underbelly, revealed a hidden network of corruption, a shadowy alliance involving not just Silas, but also several high-ranking guards and even certain officials from outside. This wasn't merely Silas's personal vendetta. It was a systemic rot, a vast, interconnected conspiracy that had used Alex as a convenient scapegoat. The realization was both horrifying and galvanizing. The fight for justice was no longer just about clearing Alex's name against Silas. It was about exposing an entire corrupt system, a daunting task that now seemed almost insurmountable, yet absolutely necessary. The weight of the systemic corruption, a leviathan too vast for a single person to tackle, settled upon Alex, yet it did not crush them. Instead, it sharpened their resolve, forging a new purpose from the ashes of despair. The first step was to build a network, a clandestine alliance within the very walls designed to isolate. Alex began subtly, observing, listening, and identifying others who carried the quiet burden of injustice, inmates whose eyes held a similar spark of defiance or a deep-seated grievance against Silas or the corrupt system. It was a painstaking process, requiring immense patience and an almost preternatural ability to read subtle cues in a world where trust was a dangerous commodity. One such individual was a quiet, unassuming man known as Elias, a former accountant wrongly imprisoned for embezzlement, whose meticulous mind could unravel complex financial discrepancies. Another was Marco, a street-smart former gang member with an uncanny ability to navigate the prison's informal communication channels and a fierce loyalty once earned. A third, known only as Whisper, was a former librarian like Alex's previous contact, possessing an encyclopedic knowledge of prison routines, guard patterns, and hidden nooks. Each of these individuals, carefully approached and tested over weeks, brought a unique skill set and a burning desire for retribution against the oppressive system. Trust was not given freely. It was painstakingly earned through shared glances, coded conversations, and small, calculated risks that demonstrated Alex's unwavering commitment to their shared cause. With the core team assembled, the hunt for evidence began. This was a perilous endeavor, a silent war waged in the shadows of the concrete labyrinth. Elias, with his sharp eye for detail, began to analyze the limited financial records they could illicitly access, searching for anomalies in supply requisitions or maintenance contracts. Marco, leveraging his network, became their eyes and ears, intercepting whispers of illicit deals and tracking the movements of corrupt guards. Whisper, with his intimate knowledge of the prison's architecture and routines, identified blind spots in surveillance, hidden compartments in old filing cabinets, and the precise moments when certain areas were unmonitored. They worked under the constant threat of discovery. Every exchanged note, every hushed conversation, every stolen moment of investigation, a potential death sentence. The stakes were not just their freedom, but their very lives, as Silas's iron grip tightened and the corrupt officials grew increasingly wary. Meanwhile, a fragile thread of hope, almost miraculously, stretched beyond the prison walls. Jamie, Alex's loved one, had never truly believed the official narrative. The abruptness of Alex's transfer, the sudden silence, the vague explanations, it all screamed foul play. Driven by an unshakable love and a gnawing suspicion, Jamie had begun their own investigation on the outside. It was a lonely, dangerous path, fraught with dead ends and veiled threats from unknown sources, subtle warnings to cease their inquiries. Yet, Jamie's determination remained unwavering, fueled by memories of Alex's integrity and the conviction that something profoundly wrong had occurred. Through a series of carefully orchestrated coded messages disguised as innocuous letters, a lifeline was established, a phrase hidden within a seemingly ordinary sentence, a particular stamp on an envelope. These became their secret language, a beacon in the darkness, reigniting Alex's hope and providing crucial external validation. Silas, however, was not oblivious. He sensed a shift, a subtle recalibration of power dynamics within his domain. The usual subservience of certain inmates seemed to waver, replaced by a guarded defiance. His paranoia escalated, manifesting in more brutal crackdowns, increased surveillance, and arbitrary searches. He tightened his grip on the prison, demanding absolute loyalty, punishing even the slightest perceived insubordination with swift, vicious retribution. This increased oppression, however, inadvertently created new opportunities for Alex's team. The very rigidity of Silas's control, the predictable patterns of his paranoia, became weaknesses to exploit. Then, during a high-stakes, coordinated effort, the breakthrough came. Elias, poring over a smuggled ledger detailing the prison's internal expenditures, discovered a series of ghost payments to a shell corporation linked directly to a high-ranking official outside the prison walls. Simultaneously, Marco intercepted a recording, a garbled conversation between Silas and a corrupt guard, discussing the disappearance of certain inmates who had threatened to expose their operation. Whisper, using his access to old storage rooms, located a hidden compartment containing a small, leather-bound journal. Inside, meticulously detailed, was a log of illicit activities, bribes, and the names of every official involved in the corrupt network, including the specific details of how Alex had been framed. This was it. The undeniable proof, the crucial piece of evidence that could bring down Silas and the entire corrupt system. The meticulously gathered evidence, Elias's detailed financial discrepancies, Marco's incriminating recording, and Whisper's explosive journal, represented the culmination of months of perilous work. Now, the time for planning was over. The moment for execution had arrived. Alex, having scrutinized every detail, every potential pitfall, decided to initiate their plan during the annual prison charity event, a rare occasion when external visitors and media were permitted within certain areas, creating a temporary chaotic vulnerability in the otherwise impenetrable security. Each ally understood their critical role. Elias was tasked with digitally transmitting the financial ledger to a pre-arranged secure contact outside, disguised as a routine prison supply order. Marco, with his street-level connections, would ensure the incriminating recording anonymously reached a prominent investigative journalist known for their fearlessness. Whisper's crucial mission was to plant the journal in a location where a trusted, but unsuspecting, external inspector would undoubtedly discover it during their rounds, triggered by an anonymous tip. As the charity event commenced, a controlled chaos began to unfurl within the prison walls. The usual strict routines fractured under the influx of visitors, blurring the lines between internal and external control. Elias, feigning a sudden illness, gained access to the infirmary's antiquated computer system, his fingers flying across the keyboard, a silent prayer on his lips as the data packets containing Silas's financial malfeasance began their journey beyond the walls. Simultaneously, Marco, utilizing the commotion of a staged inmate brawl as a diversion, slipped a burner phone with the recording into the hands of a low-level prison staff member who, unbeknownst to them, was a distant relative of the target journalist. The staff member, intrigued by the anonymous message attached, promised to deliver a package. Whisper, meanwhile, navigated the labyrinthine corridors, his movements precise and practiced, until he reached the old library, now temporarily converted into a display area for inmate crafts. With a practiced sleight of hand, he tucked the leather-bound journal into a hollowed-out section of a dusty first edition, a spot he knew the meticulous inspector always checked. The prison, once a bastion of oppressive order, now pulsed with an electric tension. Alex moved through the throng of inmates and visitors, a calm center in the brewing storm, directing, reassuring, and subtly orchestrating the unfolding events. Guards, distracted by the unexpected disruptions and the presence of outsiders, struggled to maintain control. Silas's authority, once absolute, began to visibly fray. His usual sneer was replaced by a look of growing agitation, his eyes darting nervously as he sensed the shift in the atmosphere. The smaller orchestrated incidents, a minor fire in the laundry, a power flicker in a surveillance hub, were designed not just to distract, but to sow discord and expose the fragility of his reign. Alex's leadership, born of years of unjust suffering, became a beacon for those who had long been oppressed, inspiring a quiet, collective defiance that rippled through the inmate population. Just as the internal uprising reached its critical mass, a seismic shockwave hit from the outside. Jamie, having meticulously pieced together the fragments of their own investigation, had chosen this precise moment to act. Armed with irrefutable evidence of a wider conspiracy, meticulously compiled from their own relentless pursuit of truth, Jamie had leaked the information to a national news outlet known for its integrity and reach. The story broke during the charity event, a live television report exposing the deep-seated corruption within the prison system, naming names and detailing the systemic abuses. The news spread like wildfire, reaching the prison via smuggled radios and stunned guards' devices. The external pressure converged with the internal chaos, creating an unstoppable force. The confrontation was inevitable. Alex found Silas cornered in his makeshift office, amidst the wreckage of his crumbling empire. The air crackled with years of unaddressed grievances, betrayal, and raw, visceral hatred. Silas, stripped of his power, his face contorted in a pathetic mask of desperation and rage, lunged forward. Alex, anticipating the move, sidestepped, allowing Silas to stumble against a desk. "It was never just about me, was it, Silas?" Alex's voice was calm, cutting through Silas's frantic bluster. "You were just a pawn, a useful idiot in a much bigger game." Cornered and exposed, his grand schemes unraveling, Silas, in a fit of impotent fury, inadvertently screamed, "You think this is just about me and those idiotic guards? This whole system is rigged. My orders came from the top, from the very same judges who condemned us both. They needed a patsy, someone to take the fall for their own dirty dealings, and you, Alex, were just too convenient. The truth, raw and horrifying, hung in the air. The conspiracy reached far higher than anyone had dared to imagine, implicating the very pillars of justice. The prison, once a symbol of unyielding control, now pulsed with the aftershocks of a seismic upheaval. The revelation from Silas, echoing through the chaotic halls, had shattered the illusion of isolated corruption. Authorities, initially slow to react, were now forced into a full-scale intervention. Teams of investigators swarmed the facility, their stern faces reflecting the gravity of the unfolding scandal. The corrupt officials, identified by Whisper's meticulously kept journal and Elias's digital ledger, were swiftly apprehended, their power evaporating in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Silas, his pathetic confession sealed by Alex's calm testimony, was dragged away, his reign of terror replaced by the cold reality of his own imprisonment, a stark irony he could not escape. The system, though deeply flawed, had been forced to confront its own rot. With the undeniable evidence and Silas's desperate admission, Alex's original conviction swiftly unraveled. The legal process, once a cruel mockery of justice, now moved with surprising efficiency. The judge, whose name Silas had invoked, was among the first to be suspended, his integrity irrevocably compromised. Alex's legal team, reinvigorated by the flood of new evidence, presented an irrefutable case for wrongful conviction. The verdict came quickly: exoneration. The pronouncement of freedom, whispered by a clerk in a quiet courtroom, felt surreal, a dream too fragile to fully grasp. The weight of years, of unjust suffering, lifted from Alex's shoulders, leaving behind an unfamiliar lightness, a profound, almost terrifying sense of space. Walking out of the courthouse, the sunlight felt blinding, the air tasted clean, and the distant sounds of city life were a symphony of liberation. Jamie was there, a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of newfound freedom. Their reunion was not a torrent of words, but a silent embrace, a bond forged in shared hardship and unwavering hope. The world outside the prison walls was vastly changed, yet Jamie's presence was a constant, a comforting reminder of what had been fought for. The process of healing was arduous, a slow and painstaking journey. The scars of the past, both visible and unseen, remained, etched into Alex's spirit. Yet these scars were not marks of defeat, but symbols of an extraordinary resilience, a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. They were a constant reminder of the darkness overcome and the strength discovered within. The experience had irrevocably transformed Alex. The initial desire for quiet anonymity was replaced by a burning, undeniable purpose. The injustice endured, the systemic failures witnessed, could not be ignored. Alex dedicated their life to fighting for justice, to reforming the very system that had so cruelly wronged them. They became a passionate advocate for prisoner rights, a voice for the voiceless, using their harrowing past not as a burden, but as a powerful tool for change. Speaking at conferences, lobbying tirelessly for legislative reform, Alex's story resonated deeply, inspiring others to question, to challenge, to demand better. From the ashes of despair, a new, meaningful life emerged, one dedicated to ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate. However, the fight, Alex soon realized, was far from over. Through their new work, poring over case files and legislative documents, Alex uncovered a subtle, almost imperceptible thread. A pattern of similar wrongful convictions, dismissed as isolated incidents, now appeared interconnected. The shadow of the original conspiracy, though seemingly dismantled, had left lingering traces, like tendrils reaching into other corners of the justice system. It was a chilling realization. While justice had been served in their own case, the battle against corruption was a hydra-headed beast, constantly regenerating. This final revelation was not one of despair, but of renewed resolve. Alex understood then that vigilance was not merely a choice, but a lifelong commitment. The struggle continued, a testament to the enduring power of individual determination against the insidious forces of injustice, a fight that would forever define Alex's unwavering purpose.